When I was getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, it kind of felt like learning to drive a car, but with a lot less wheels and a lot more sweaty people. Luckily, I eventually succeeded in both, without any major accidents. Rest in peace to my sad few mirror though, but anyway, hello everyone! It's your boy Ojamajestic, and today I'll be talking about how to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll be covering the basic concepts as well as some of the things that trip beginners up. I'll also be covering which formats are available, and I'll also give you some resources to make your journey into Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit easier. But let's not waste any more of your time. Yu-Gi-Oh! How do you win? Well, the aim of the game is to win from your opponent in one of three ways. First of all, you can reduce their life points to 0, which is the most common way of doing things. Second of all, you can make them draw from a deck that's empty. And lastly, you can also use the alternative win conditions of cards like Exodia to win the game. This can be done by using your cards. So you have your main deck cards like your spell cards and your trap cards and your main deck monster cards, as well as your extract cards, so your link monsters, your synchro monsters, your Xyz monsters and your fusion monsters. This might all seem like a lot, but I hope that I can give you enough information in combination with the tutorials of Master Duel and Duel Links to make it an easy process to go through. So let's get started with the main deck monsters. Normal monsters and effect monsters are what you think they are. Normal monsters don't have effects, and effect monsters do. There are a lot of subcategories for effect monsters, but most of the time the card text will just explain thoroughly enough what it does, so let's keep it at that. Ritual monsters will generally need to be summoned by using a ritual spell, and some monsters whose levels add up to the level of the ritual monsters. And lastly, for the main deck monsters we have pendulum monsters, which are the most complex cards of the bunch. Since you won't encounter them anytime soon, I will be leaving them outside of this video to not overload you with information. But I will leave a resource in the description so you can check it out when you want to. Now onto the extra deck monsters, all of which will have certain requirements which are listed in the first few lines of text. Fusion monsters will often require a fusion spell in addition to the required monsters to be summoned. Synchro monsters will often require two types of monsters on the field. A tuner monster, which is an attribute that is listed in the bold text of that monster, and a non-tuner monster, whose levels add up to the level of that synchro monster. Xyz monsters will require two or more monsters on the field of the same level. They can be overlaid into the Xyz monster. And lastly, link monsters. These are a bit more tricky, but they should still be graspable. You can send the required creatures from the field to the graveyard and then you got your link monster. But the complex part is where you can place them. A link monster can only be placed in one of the extra monster zones if you don't currently fill one of them, or a zone that the link monster's arrows point to. And that is it for the monsters. Of course, this overview is extremely simplified and there are a lot of exceptions. The same will be true for spells and traps. But this should at least give you an idea of how everything works. So let's move on to traps and spells. Traps need to be placed a turn before they can be used, but after that turn, they can be used at any moment when their activation requirements are met, if they have any. Spells, on the other hand, can be used in your turn, where they can be legally used if they have requirements. Quick play spells are a special kind of spells. They're denoted by a little symbol on the top right of the card. If you set them, you can also use them as a trap card, during your opponent's turn for example. The main complexity of spells and traps that I'm skipping over is spell speeds. I'll leave a resource in the description if you want to check it out, but you won't need it in the beginning of your Yu-Gi-Oh journey. Now that you know which card types there are and how they are used, it's time to talk about deck building. Each card can be included a maximum of 3 times in a deck, unless that card is on the ban list. Each format has its own ban list which can ban, limit or semi-limit a card. A ban card cannot be used. Only a single copy of a limited card can be used, and 2 copies can be used for semi-limited cards. The ban lists in Speed Duel and Duel Links are a bit different though. There you can only use 1 limited card in general, 2 semi-limited cards, and they also have triple limited cards where you can only use 3 cards that are on the triple limited list. Since I just mentioned Speed Duel and Duel Links, I think it's time to get into the different formats. For me there are 4 main ones. First of all, you have Speed Duel. It's a fun format, it's not as complex as the other ones, but if you just want to start the game with a couple of friends, this might be ideal for you, especially if you buy this box right here. It's really worth your money, you can just start playing some games with them. The downside of speed duel is that there's not a large competitive scene, especially in my area. Maybe this might not be true in your area, but I don't know. So maybe if that's what you're searching for, this might not be optimal. But if you're a little bit intimidated by the whole complexity of Master Duel and the TCG, this can be a great way to start. Secondly, we have Duel Links. That's how I started. It's also a lot less complex than Master Duel and the TCG, but it offers enough complexity to keep you entertained for a while. It's also free on your phone and PC, so it's quite easy to get into. But compared to Master Duel, it is quite pay to win and grind heavy. It's gotten better over the years, but yeah, it's still worth mentioning, sadly. So this might be for you, this might not be for you. You can always give it a try. Thirdly, we have Master Duel. Yeah, this is the first of the formats that will really throw you in at the deep end, but with the visual cues, I think you'll be able to figure it out, especially if you watch a tutorial or two. The monetization is great. Honestly, you can get a deck that you want on your first day for free, which wouldn't really be possible in Duel Links most of the time. And it plays so good. It's a great card game simulator. The best in my opinion. But of course, the complexity might scare you off a bit, but I'm sure you'll be able to power through. And then lastly, the most complex of them all, the TCG. It's like Master Duel, but you need to remind yourself of everything. But it's also the most fun in my opinion. Because you're sitting in front of your opponents, you can have a little chat about whatever you want to chat about. And that's what card games are for me. It's more the social aspect that I like, and that's why I really like the TCG. Also, don't be intimidated by the fact that you need to remind yourself of everything. Most people, in my experience at least, really like to help the new player out, because more people in the game is more fun for everyone. But how would you start? Personally, I would advise you to start with Master Duel or Duel Links and then Master Duel before getting into the TCG, but you do you. Since I have experience with the last 3 formats, I will be making some beginner's guides on them eventually. So yeah, that might be worth checking out. But in the meantime, I'll leave some extra information in the description so you can get started. Besides these formats, there are 2 main categories that I also need to mention. The retro formats like Reaper format and Edison. I will make a whole list on this side here. And also other simulators that will give you all the cards from the beginning. I did not put them in the main categories because they're a little bit less accessible and can be more niche. So you can check them out on your own, but this might be an extra hurdle to get over. Lastly, I would also really recommend you to interact with Yu-Gi-Oh content besides the game itself. Scroll through Reddit, watch some YouTube videos, what have you. Because for me personally, getting into the game really felt like learning a new language. The more concepts I interacted with and the more new ideas I got on my YouTube feed, for example, the better I got in the game and the easier it was to get into it. I think a lot of people underestimate this fact, but please don't. I really hope you interact with it and make it yourself a little bit easier to get into the game. I'll leave some of my YouTube recommendations in the description, but the community has so much to offer that you will probably have to look for yourself to find what suits you. And that was it for today, gamers. I hope I taught you something and that you enjoyed the video. And as previously mentioned, I will be making some videos on how to get into Duel Links, Master Duel and the TCG eventually. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe. But more importantly, tell your homies you love them for me, okay? Bye bye.